Hello, we're our Lives channel. Today we will delve into one of the most shocking and potentially tragic storylines that will unfold during the explosive week of September 29th to October 3rd, 2025. As Salem faces a devastating fire emergency that puts Holly Jonas's life in immediate and mortal danger. The upcoming episodes promise to deliver heart-stopping drama as Holly Jonas finds herself trapped in a life-threatening situation that stems directly from Sophia Choi's calculated and malicious schemes. This fire incident represents the culmination of weeks of escalating tension and dangerous manipulation that has been building between these two young women, with devastating consequences that could forever alter the landscape of Salem's younger generation. The deadly setup unfolds. The catastrophic events begin in Holly's seemingly peaceful dorm room, where she has been studying late into the evening. What appears to be an ordinary night of college preparation quickly transforms into a nightmare scenario when Holly, still heavily affected by the powerful sedatives that Sophia secretly administered to her drink earlier, begins to experience severe drowsiness and disorientation. The drugging incident, which took place when Sophia visited Holly and Ariana's dorm room under the guise of a friendly visit, has left Holly in an extremely vulnerable state, unable to maintain proper awareness of her surroundings or respond appropriately to potential dangers. As Holly struggles against the overwhelming effects of the unknown substance coursing through her system, she attempts to create a more comfortable atmosphere in her room by lighting several aromatic candles around her study area. These candles, which under normal circumstances would provide a soothing ambience for late-night studying, become the instruments of potential tragedy when Holly's compromised mental state leads to a catastrophic accident. The powerful sedatives have significantly impaired her coordination and judgment, making her movements clumsy and unpredictable as she navigates her familiar living space. The moment of crisis. The pivotal moment arrives when Holly, overcome by the drug-induced exhaustion, finally succumbs to sleep while still seated at her desk surrounded by burning candles and scattered papers. In her unconscious state, her arm sweeps across the desk surface, knocking over one of the lit candles in a movement that will change everything. The flame immediately makes contact with a nearby trash can that has been filled to the brim with discarded papers, research materials, and other highly flammable academic documents that Holly and her roommate had accumulated throughout their semester. The fire spreads with terrifying speed through the paper-filled container, sending flames leaping upward toward the ceiling and outward toward other combustible materials in the cramped dorm room. Within minutes, what began as a small accident transforms into a raging inferno that threatens to consume not only Holly's room but potentially the entire dormitory floor. The smoke begins to pour out from under the door and through ventilation systems, creating a toxic environment that poses an immediate threat to Holly's already compromised respiratory system. Brady's alarming discovery. Meanwhile, Brady Black arrives at the university dormitory for what was supposed to be a routine visit to check on his son Tate and ensure that the young man is staying out of trouble during this difficult period in his life. As Brady makes his way through the hallway toward Tate's room, he becomes immediately aware of an acrid smell that sets off every alarm bell in his experienced mind. The unmistakable scent of smoke and burning materials fills his nostrils, triggering his protective instincts and sending him into high alert mode as he realizes that someone in the building is in serious danger. Brady's years of dealing with various crises and emergencies have honed his ability to recognize potential disasters, and the intensity of the smoke smell tells him that this is no minor incident but rather a full-scale fire emergency that requires immediate action. His first instinct is to locate the source of the danger while simultaneously alerting other residents and emergency services to prevent what could become a tragic loss of life. The gravity of the situation becomes crystal clear as he notices that the smoke is becoming thicker and more pervasive with each passing moment. Tate's desperate panic. When the fire alarm finally begins its piercing wail throughout the dormitory building, Tate Black immediately springs into action, but his response is driven more by panic than by rational thinking. His immediate concern centers on Holly's welfare, as he knows that she has been struggling with various personal issues recently and may not be in the proper state of mind to respond appropriately to emergency situations. The young man's protective instincts toward Holly override his concern for his own safety as he begins a frantic search throughout the building. Tate's panic reaches new heights when he encounters Ari Horton, who delivers the devastating news that Holly is still inside her dorm room despite the obvious signs of fire and smoke throughout the building. This revelation transforms Tate's concern into absolute terror, as he realizes that the girl he cares about deeply may be trapped in the very room where the fire appears to have originated. His mind races with worst-case scenarios as he contemplates the possibility that Holly may be unconscious, injured, or worse. The deadly question of responsibility. As the emergency situation unfolds, the underlying question of criminal responsibility begins to emerge from the chaos and confusion surrounding the fire. The fact that Holly was in a severely compromised state due to Sophia's deliberate drugging creates a direct causal link between Sophia's malicious actions and Holly's inability to respond appropriately to the fire emergency. Legal experts and Salem residents alike will undoubtedly begin to examine whether Sophia's decision to drug Holly constitutes not just assault, but potentially attempted murder if Holly succumbs to her injuries. The precedent for holding someone criminally responsible for the consequences of drugging another person is well established in both legal circles and within Salem's own history of complex criminal cases. If Holly's condition prevents her from escaping the fire and results in her death, Sophia could face charges ranging from involuntary manslaughter to first-degree murder, depending on how prosecutors choose to interpret her intentions and the foreseeability of the tragic consequences that followed her actions. The life-or-death struggle. As the fire continues to rage and smoke fills the building, the question that haunts everyone involved is whether Holly will survive this deadly combination of drug-induced unconsciousness and fire emergency. Her compromised state means that even if rescuers reach her room quickly, she may not be physically capable of cooperating with evacuation efforts or protecting herself from smoke inhalation and burn injuries. The powerful sedatives in her system could prevent her from regaining consciousness even when faced with the immediate threat to her life. The tragic irony of the situation is that Holly's academic dedication and late-night study habits, combined with Sophia's calculated poisoning, have created the perfect storm for this potentially fatal accident. Every second that passes while Holly remains unconscious in the smoke-filled room increases the likelihood that she will suffer permanent injury or death from this preventable tragedy that stems directly from Sophia's jealousy and vindictive nature. This shocking storyline promises to deliver intense drama, life-changing consequences, and potentially criminal justice proceedings that will reverberate throughout Salem for months to come, as the community grapples with the devastating results of one young woman's decision to drug another in pursuit of revenge and romantic manipulation. Part 2. Are Sarah and Xander reunited for good, or headed straight for disaster? In Salem, the pull between love and heartbreak is rarely simple, and when it comes to Sarah and Xander, their story has always been one of fiery passion, painful betrayals, and moments of fragile reconciliation. For weeks, fans have been wondering whether these two would ever find their way back to each other, or if the scars of their past were simply too deep to heal. The latest developments may have given us our answer, but as any longtime viewer knows, in this town, nothing is ever as easy as it seems. A chance encounter in the garage. The evening began in an ordinary place, a dimly lit garage where Sarah had brought her daughter, little Victoria. With the kind of tired determination only a mother can muster, Sarah put the baby down, hoping to end yet another tense interaction with Xander. Before leaving, she made him a solemn promise. She would stay away from him. The words were steady, deliberate, and filled with that blend of strength and sadness that has become Sarah's armor in recent months. But Xander, being Xander, wasn't the least bit shaken. He didn't care for her vow to keep her distance. His piercing eyes and the stubborn set of his jaw said everything. He wasn't going to let her go so easily. The walls that Sarah had worked so hard to build around herself began to crumble in that instant. And that's when she seized her chance. With the kind of bravery that comes from desperation, she brought up something that had been gnawing at her for weeks. Couples therapy. Sarah's bold proposal. Now, Sarah Horton is not one to give up on love, even after it has chewed her up and spat her out. She reminded Xander that they owed it to themselves and to Victoria to at least try. She knew how foolish it sounded, suggesting therapy to a man as proud and headstrong as Xander. But Sarah has always been relentless when she believes in something. At first, Xander resisted. The idea of sitting in some stranger's office and talking about feelings wasn't exactly his style. But Sarah, with her patient persuasion and the quiet intensity that has always unnerved him, kept pushing. And finally, perhaps out of exhaustion, perhaps because he still loves her more than he dares admit, he agreed. That moment, small as it seemed, cracked the door open to a possibility both terrifying and intoxicating. Reconciliation. A night of marshmallows and memories. Their night didn't end with arguments or slammed doors. Instead, it took a surprisingly sweet turn. They found themselves outside, roasting marshmallows like teenagers at a summer camp. It was almost absurd, watching two people with so much history, betrayals, lies, broken promises, laughing over melted sugar. They even talked about Rachel, a little girl who has played a complicated role in both their lives. Despite the storms, it became clear that Sarah and Xander both still cared deeply for her. Then, in a moment of levity, Sarah reminded him about her snake, aptly named S'mores. Fans might be wondering if we'll finally see the infamous reptile slither its way back into Salem life. And really, wouldn't that be the perfect metaphor for Sarah and Xander? Dangerous, unpredictable, yet oddly endearing. Sparks behind closed doors. Eventually, the sweetness of marshmallows gave way to a different kind of heat. Back in Xander's bedroom, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. There they stood, foreheads pressed together, their breath mingling in the quiet darkness. Sarah's hand lingered at the button of his shirt, trembling with hesitation yet refusing to pull away. The weight of years of longing and regret pressed down on them both, until the dam finally broke. One kiss, then another, and then there was no stopping it. Clothes were tossed aside, hearts raced, and for one night, the outside world simply didn't exist. They ended up in bed, tangled together in a mix of passion and desperation, as though they were trying to rewrite history with every touch. For viewers who have watched their painful journey, it was a shocking yet inevitable moment. Regrets and foreshadowing. Afterwards, in the quiet aftermath, Sarah did something that surprised even herself. She insisted she had no regrets. Her voice was firm, her expression unshakable. For once, she wasn't running from what had just happened. But here's the thing about Salem romances. Happiness never lasts long. Fans can feel it already. This reunion is built on shaky ground. The problems that tore them apart haven't magically disappeared. Therapy might help, yes, but will it be enough to erase the betrayals, the lies, the wounds that still bleed beneath the surface? And what about the others in their orbit? People who won't stand by quietly while Sarah and Xander try to rekindle their flame. Conflict is inevitable, heartbreak almost certain. For every passionate kiss, there's a shadow of what's to come. Where do they go from here? So, are Sarah and Xander reunited? Technically, yes. Their night together proved that their chemistry is as powerful as ever. Maybe even stronger now that they've lived through so much pain. But reunion doesn't necessarily mean salvation. If history has taught us anything, it's that their love burns too brightly to last without leaving scars. The therapy sessions might offer hope, or they might expose wounds too raw to heal. And if Sarah thinks she can walk away from this unscathed, she's fooling herself. For now, fans will cling to the sweetness of marshmallows and the passion of that bedroom scene. But deep down, we all know the truth. This is Salem. Love stories here don't end with happily ever after. They end with tears, betrayals, and battles no one saw coming. Sarah may not regret it now, but something tells us she, and Xander, are about to pay a price far higher than they ever imagined.